Have you ever heard the saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog? Well, in the steel-clad world of World War II, one tank embodied this spirit more than any other, the Sherman Firefly. But its story didn't start with glory. In fact, it started with laughter. When the American M4 Sherman tank first rolled onto the battlefields of North Africa and Europe, the reaction from their German adversaries was, to put it mildly, dismissive. In the eyes of battle-hardened panzer commanders sitting confidently in their formidable Tiger and Panther tanks, the Sherman was a joke. They called it the Tommy Cooker or the Ronson, after the lighter brand, with the grim slogan, "It lights first time, every time." And they weren't entirely wrong. The standard Sherman, with its short-barreled 75mm gun, was outclassed. Its shells would often just bounce harmlessly off the thick frontal armor of a Tiger. Imagine the sheer terror for an Allied crew, knowing your main weapon was little more than a pea-shooter against the beast in front of you. German gunners could pick off Shermans from over a mile away, long before the Shermans could even get into effective range. The M4 was designed for mass production and infantry support, not for titanic duels with Germany's heavy metal monsters. The imbalance was so severe that it took on average 5 Shermans to have a chance at knocking out a single Tiger, often by swarming it, and hoping one could get a lucky shot into its weaker side or rear armor. The cost in men and machines was staggering. For the Allied soldiers on the ground, the psychological impact was immense. The sight of a Tiger was enough to cause panic. Its 80mm gun, originally an anti-aircraft weapon, was legendary for its accuracy and devastating power. Allied morale was taking a hit. Something had to be done. The laughter in the German ranks needed to be silenced. And that's where British ingenuity entered the picture. While the Americans focused on producing Shermans in overwhelming numbers, a few clever engineers back in Britain were working on a secret weapon. They looked at the Sherman, with its reliable engine and spacious turret, and saw not a weakness, but potential. Their idea was audacious. What if they could fit their own secret weapon, the incredibly powerful 17-pounder anti-tank gun, into the Sherman's turret? Now, this was no simple task. The 17-pounder was a massive cannon, long, heavy, and with a powerful recoil. It was never designed to fit inside a medium tank turret. Early attempts were failures. The gun was too big, it threw the turret off balance, and the recoil was so violent it risked tearing the tank apart. It seemed like a dead end. But giving up wasn't an option. A brilliant British officer, Major George Brighty, and his team at the Royal Armoured Corps Gunnery School had a breakthrough. They found that by turning the gun on its side, redesigning the recoil system, and adding a large counterweight to the back of the turret, they could just about make it fit. They even had to cut a hole in the back of the turret for the radio, which was displaced by the massive gun breech. The result was a strange-looking hybrid. It was a Sherman, but it was different. It had an absurdly long barrel that stuck out, making it instantly recognizable. This new creation was christened the Sherman Firefly. Initially, even some Allied commanders were skeptical, but on the firing range, the Firefly proved its worth. The 17-pounder gun could punch through the armor of a Tiger or Panther from standard combat ranges. Suddenly, the Allies had an answer. The Tommy Cooker had grown teeth, sharp ones. The real test came in the summer of 1944, during the brutal fighting in the hedgerows of Normandy, right after D-Day. German panzer divisions, confident in their technological superiority, moved to counter the Allied invasion. They expected to face the same old Shermans they had so easily dispatched in the past. They were in for a horrifying surprise. Picture a German Tiger crew scanning the landscape. They spot a column of Shermans. The commander smirks. More easy kills. He orders his gunner to take aim. But then he notices something odd. One of the Shermans has a very, very long barrel. Before he can even process what that means, there's a flash, a deafening crack. and a high-velocity shell rips through his tank's supposedly impenetrable armor, turning the inside into a hell of fire and shrapnel. The laughter was over. Panic began to set in among German tank crews. An order was issued. Target the long-barrel Shermans first. They learned to fear the Firefly. The British, aware of this, became masters of deception. They would paint the end of the long barrel white, or use clever camouflage to create a false muzzle break halfway down, hoping to trick German gunners into thinking it was just a standard short-barreled Sherman. Every Firefly became a priority target, a testament to its effectiveness. One of the most famous encounters involved a single Firefly commanded by Sergeant Joe Ekins. During Operation Totalize in Normandy, his unit stumbled upon a group of 3 Tiger tanks led by the legendary German tank ace, Michael Wittmann, a man credited with destroying over 130 Allied tanks. In a chaotic, heart-pounding engagement that lasted only a few minutes, Ekins and his crew, moving from one firing position to another, managed to knock out all 3 Tigers, including Wittmann's. A single Firefly had eliminated one of Germany's greatest tank heroes. The myth of the invincible Tiger was shattered. The Sherman Firefly completely changed the dynamic of armored warfare on the Western Front. It wasn't a perfect tank. It was still a Sherman underneath, with relatively thin armor, but it gave Allied crews a fighting chance. It leveled the playing field. For every Firefly in a troop of tanks, there was hope. It was the great equalizer, a symbol of how a clever modification could turn a perceived failure into a legendary success. So, the next time you see a picture of a Sherman tank, don't just think of it as the Ronson. Remember the Firefly. Remember the long-barreled beast that silenced the laughter of its enemies and proved that with a little bit of grit and a whole lot of firepower, even an underdog can become a legend. The crews who served in them were some of the bravest of the war, knowing they were the #1 target, but also knowing they were the ones who could finally fight back. The toy had become a tiger killer. Thanks so much for watching. We dive into incredible stories like this every week, so if you enjoyed this journey into military history, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. We'll see you in the comments.